Jeg står ude foran Charlies Bar her i København, og jeg skal ind og snakke med Ian, som er ejeren, og vi skal snakke om Cask, så kom med indenfor. Hey Ian, and thanks for having me today.
You're welcome.
Thanks for making the time.
You're welcome.
We're here to talk about Cask. Yeah,
Cheers.
cheers.
What are you drinking?
It's one of your IPAs.
Proper job or big job?
Proper job.
Okay.
Um,
Nice session.
yeah, nice session IPA.
Yep.
It's bitter, hoppy, clean.
Not too
Great
floral.
No, not.
It's a good session beer. Yep.
Yeah, it really is. And we're here to talk about Cask in general, and of course a little bit about you and your background. So you're not Danish.
No.
So where are you from?
London.
London?
I'm
Yeah.
a Brit. Yep. Part of the diaspora. Yeah.
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 So what's the story about Charlie's Bar and the whole Cask Ale? Why did you bring Cask Ale to Denmark? Because you have two bars, and it's probably the only two bars in Denmark serving Cask Ale. So why is that, and how is that story?
Well, I opened Charlie's I came to Denmark in 1998 and bummed around for a bit, wondering what I was going to do next. And the beer situation in Denmark at that time was utterly appalling.
Yeah.
I mean, utterly appalling.
Yeah.
You know, for a country that supposedly made the best beer in the world.
Yeah.
There was nothing to choose from.
No.
And the standard was as bad as the quality.
Yeah.
Or as bad as the variety of beers you could get. So yeah, I thought it would be a good idea to open a proper bar serving good beer. I started off with Hancock on tap, because it was then and probably still is the best pilsner you can get in the country.
Yeah.
And moved from there to bringing in cask beers from the UK. Yeah.
Yeah. So none of the beers are Danish, I guess. They don't make Cask Ale in Denmark.
No.
Anywhere? No.
No. Sadly
So
not.
No. I actually talked to Fanny Bryghouse, and they also have a brewer from the UK, and he is thinking about doing a Cask Ale.
They're
over there.
always thinking about it.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
So what's your background in the beer industry?
Nothing really.
No?
I
Just
did
a
not
bloke who
come.
wanted to open a bar?
No, I did not come from the beer industry. I came from a very different background, but I knew I'd always had an interest in cask beers and drinking cask beers. So yeah, it was a good background, a good position to start from. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is a Cask Ale?
What is cask beer? Cask beer is a living product. It has been brewed like other beers, but then placed in a non-pressurized barrel called a cask, reseeded with fresh yeast, then closed, and obviously the residual sugars in the malt in the beer are then conditioned by the beer is conditioned by
the yeast.
By the yeast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so it's not forced carbonated, or it's not carbonated.
It's natural carbonation,
it's natural
as
carbonation.
all beer should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
the flavors are subtle, refreshing flavors
Yeah.
of the way nature intended.
Yeah.
Yes. that there is a harmony there. There should be a harmony of flavors.
Yeah.
Too often, and I would say in 90% of cases, drinking beer is a disharmony of flavors.
Yeah.
You either have too many flavors in the foreground and no flavors in the background, or you have just a background and nothing else.
Yeah.
So it is about beer is about balance. It's about harmony, and in my opinion, the subtlety of cask ale makes for a very good harmony and therefore a very good drinking experience. Yeah.
Would you say it's more yeast forward, the flavor, because there are yeast in the
of course,
in the cake.
And each brewery has its own yeast footprint. Yeah. Cask ale is very much about, to use a trendy word. Cask ale is about terroir. About the origin of the brew, of that particular brew. Yeah.
Is there some kind of I know there's a lot of tradition and historical things about cask ale. Is there also a romance, do you think? Is it romantic to drink for the love of beer, I mean?
I think as cask ale is dying, of course, of course there is a romance about it, because it represents an old world, an old dying world, compared to a money-focused commercial world, which is what craft brewing is all about. I'm an enemy of craft brewing. Craft brewing is about
in the commercial
money.
sense.
Craft brewing is keg beer through the back door. Simple as that. Craft brewing is about money and money alone, and cask beer is about beer, but also a lifestyle which is at variance with craft brewing, which is why cask beer is dying. And along with the pubs that serve it. The pubs are dying. Cask beer has a symbiotic relationship with pubs.
Exactly.
The two go together.
Exactly.
As bread and butter
You can't get cask beer on bottles.
Exactly. Well, you can get bottle conditioned beers, but it's not the same.
No.
Essentially, cask beer is meant to be served in a pub as a fresh, living product.
Exactly.
Looked after, obviously, by people who care and love beer and appreciate other people drinking the product that they have cared for.
Because exactly. So when I do research or just learning about beer, and every time I come around cask ales, there's this whole tradition, historical thing about it, but there's also a craft to it. Just the way you pour it, the way you take care of the casks.
I think the word craft it's the most abused word in the English language. So I care not to even use it any longer.
So what would you call it?
I would call it, what would
respect
I call
to
it?
The
is there another word for it?
I don't know. But respect for the beer and how to treat it.
The word has been abused, and so it has been denuded of meaning. I would just prefer to call it a cask beer. I mean, the meaning is in the term.
Yeah.
You really can't make cask beer on a huge scale any longer because the large breweries, the large beer factories are not committed to it any longer. So it is very much a small locally produced product. Yeah. Sadly, not produced in Denmark.
No.
And the reason it isn't produced in Denmark is quite simply there are very few pubs that are capable of looking after it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Most bars in Denmark are only concerned about one thing, making money and nothing else.
No.
Charlie's and the Wharf have to make money to survive, but we are also concerned about other factors than just making money.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's why cask beer is very much part of us, and which is why, in our own small way, we continue to survive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It, for me, without it sounding cheesy or cliched, the business I run is very much a lifestyle.
Yeah.
So and cask beer is very much a lifestyle product. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah.
There's a philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about making money, and it's not just about selling a commodity, a commercial product. Yeah. There's more to it than that.
Yeah.
For instance, if we couldn't serve cask beer, I wouldn't be in the business.
No.
If someone said to me tomorrow, look, I'm sorry, but you won't be able to get cask beer any longer, you will only be able to get keg, I would say, well, that's the end.
Yeah.
That's the end of the story. That's the end of the adventure.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for 22 years now. Fine, we've had a good run.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Yeah.
So, who comes in here? Do they come in here? I guess you have regulars who come here often because of
the bar.
Yeah. Because of the cask ale. But what about people who never been here before?
Then they come in, and like the free lads over there, they're drinking Hancock, they're drinking keg beers. Maybe if they came a bit more often, then they would graduate to cask beers.
Well, what does people think about cask beer when they get one for the first time? Because it has kind of a rumor of being flat and stale.
Well, it shouldn't be flattened.
Exactly.
And it shouldn't be stale.
Exactly. But that's kind of the prejudice, or what you want to call it.
Of course, because there's a lot of bad cask beer out there that doesn't begin being bad, but ends up being bad because the pub that it is in doesn't know how to look after it, or not enough people are drinking it. Remember, it's a living product. It has a very short life of around about 4 to 6 weeks. Once it's opened, ideally it should be drunk within 3 days. At a push, 5 days. So you have a week to sell a 41 litres, which is in a firkin, which is in the usual cask. So of course, if you're pushing it further than that, if you're pushing a living product further than that, obviously oxidization will take over. I mean, it's like having a beautiful bottle of vintage wine on the table, and not and hoping that is going to last you more than a couple of days. Well, I'm sorry, it's not.
No.
And the beer, like the wine, will turn to vinegar. It will become flat and stale and then undrinkable. Luckily, we don't have that problem, because we have enough people who are in love with cask ale, because once you get a taste for real beer, once you get a taste for it, it's very difficult to go back to keg in parentheses, craft beer.
Yeah.
Because it's a very different drinking experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the whole story behind the cask ales as well, and the tradition and
the tradition,
yeah.
the
and people like you
skills,
for the love of the beer and
the skills that are involved.
So how is a cask ale or cask beer poured the right way?
Well, it can either be poured. Obviously, at Charlie's, it's poured through a hand pump, through an air pump. You're just pumping it.
Yeah.
At the wharf, it is gravity poured. The whole idea of opening the wharf, and it's quite a unique pub in Europe.
Yeah.
They are behind the bar in their own cask coolers. The casks are cooled to a cellar temperature, around about 11, 13 degrees. Yeah. And they was a gravity poured. Okay. So they're poured directly from the cask. Yeah. The whole idea of doing it at the wharf was to actually show people what cask beer was all about. Yeah. Whereas here we didn't have the space, we had to use hand pumps. Yeah. We have such little space here, we really don't even have a cellar. We certainly don't have a cask cellar. No. So we have to use the back room.
Okay.
And
because traditionally it's in the cellar and you pump it up with a big handle.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And obviously if the cellar was big enough here, we would do exactly the same thing. What we do here is we have hand pumps, but we pump the cask beers from the cask fridges, which you will see in a moment, to the bar. Yeah.
Cool. So there's been this campaign through the UK from the Craftbeer channel. They said keep cask alive, and they did all the kind of interviews and stuff like that. And what is your take on that? Why should we keep cask alive? Why should we just say, okay, that was it, we had a good run? Why should it be kept alive, this whole tradition? And
well, of course, we had an extremely good run of thousands of years. Yeah. I mean, remember, keg has only been round since the 1930s, but really commercially only been round since the 50s. Yeah. Of course.
So isn't it just evolution and just evolving to be that? Why should we keep cask alive then?
Because it is the ultimate in beer. It's the ultimate beer drinking experience. Yeah. Nothing can beat cask. No. Nothing. And remember with keg beer now. This is the contradiction. With the keg breweries are now producing beer in non-returnable plastic kegs. We are building keg mountains the size of Everest with their plastic non-returnables. Yeah. We only bring in metals. Yeah. So, but of course, cask is dying. Yeah, it's like yes, of course it is. The pubs are dying. Yeah. So yes, and it's expensive to produce cask beers. Yeah. There's quite a lot of waste with cask beers. Yeah. Obviously, with anything with a limited life, of course. Yeah. There's wastage. Yeah. But it's like saying, do we keep good restaurants alive, or do we just let them die and we all end up eating McDonald's and Burger King and KFCs? Yeah, exactly. Do we want to drink and eat proper food and proper beer and proper wine? Or do we want to commercialize everything and standardize everything? Yeah, obviously we're going to lose something. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, okay, so as I understand, the brewing is the same, but when you tap cask beer, therein lies the difference. And you already talked about adding
it's
yeast.
Primarily ale brewing, so but of course, I mean, the ale brewing would be the same. so on and so on.
Yeah.
The brewing period is around about 7 days, and it will be put into a cask, matured.
Is it maturing in the cask, or
it's
is
matured in the cask?
In a
it's matured in the cask.
Yeah.
Second conditioning, it is racked usually after around about 7 days, and then undergoes a second conditioning in the cask, or a maturation period in the cask.
Yeah.
And again, depending on the beers, obviously most of the beers are session beers, but anywhere between 3% and 5%. Obviously, you can get obviously stronger beers depending on their style, which will be higher in ABV, higher in alcohol, and obviously their maturation period will be longer. Yeah. But most cask beers are fresh, meant to be drunk fresh. Yeah.
So what are the limits with cask beer? Can you make a double mashed imperial stout and put it in a cask, or New England IPA? Or are there any limits to it, or is it just the breweries that really doesn't have that broad
There's no limit
selection
to what you can do in cask beer.
No.
There's nothing new in the brewing world.
No.
Nothing new whatsoever. Our forefathers were doing exactly what they're doing now 100 years ago or more.
Yeah.
There is nothing new at all. All these hipsters think that they're discovering new things.
Yeah.
They're not.
No.
I'm sorry. There may be many more different varietals of hops around, but still the hop bill or the malt bill in the old days were still eye-wateringly big.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think we're doing anything particularly new.
No.
The only difference is that sadly, most of the breweries are kegging it.
Yeah. So that's the main difference.
That is the big difference, because they're sending it to bars and not pubs.
Yeah.
That is the big difference.
Yeah.
That is the big difference. It's the difference between a proper restaurant producing excellent food or sending it to a fast food joint. Yeah. And most bars today are fast food joints.
Yeah.
That's what they are.
Yeah. Quick in, quick out.
But the reason for our success, this tiny little hole in the wall here, is we're not a fast food joint, and we try to serve our cask beers in the best way we can. Or at their best. Yeah. And because we have sufficient enough people coming in,
it can be done.
We can keep it young and fresh and not stale and not flat.
Yeah, exactly. It tastes great.
Nothing wrong. There's nothing worse than a
stale oxidized beer.
Yeah, it's just the same as there's nothing worse than a good meal that has gone cold.
Exactly.
And been laying around. Yeah.
So you started Charlie's 22 years ago.
Yeah.
How has the selection of beers you could get to for serving in casks? How has that been changed from then to now?
It's got less and less.
Less and less?
We've been going backwards.
Yeah.
And obviously Brexit has not helped. It's much more difficult now.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And because Danish microbreweries don't want to do casks, because it is expensive to do casks, and because no one is interested in doing casks.
Yeah, of course, if they were interested, they would do it. But
Yeah.
if you have the only 2 bars in Denmark serving cask,
Exactly,
it's
because
hard.
the others want to run fast food restaurants.
Yeah.
What they're interested in is just doing things simply.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they're interested in.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
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 Fine.
But you keep doing it the right way.
We keep doing it the right way, and for as long as we can, we will continue doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And bring a lot of pleasure to those men and women who appreciate what will be as should be.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, there's sufficient enough young people who also appreciate what real beer drinking is all about, and they provide the next generation of cask ale drinkers.
Yeah.
But
Let's hope they will keep cask alive for many years then.
yeah, but I think the future is not particularly rosy. I think it's probably yeah. I think it's probably dying. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sadly. So. Well, I hope you'll be here for many years, and I'll certainly do mine to help you.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me today.
You're welcome. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.